All right, good morning, everyone. We will now call the Wednesday, October 19th, 2022 meeting of the Industrial Development Board to order. I want to thank everyone. It's so amazing, I think, to be at this facility. This board passed a pilot related to the National Museum of African American Music several years ago. And super excited to be here as well, because for those of us that have been on the board for several years, we routinely, I wouldn't say routinely, but we did meet at various offsite places, and certainly during the pandemic, we have not been able to do that. So this is the first offsite meeting that we've had since 2019. So wonderful to be here, and want to thank the staff here at the National Museum of African American Music for all of their support and help. And again, wonderful to see everyone. With that said, let me see if Henry is available. Thank you, Ginger. While we wait on Henry to come in with the museum and speak to us with a few words, you all did receive the minutes for the June 8th, June 15th, and August 17th, 2022 Industrial Development Board. You did receive those minutes already last week. I'll give everyone just a brief moment to review, and then certainly we can entertain a motion to move forward. And also just remember, like the Metro ITS, I want to thank their staff as well for getting everything set up. This meeting is not live, but it will be posted on the YouTube page. So thank you to Metro ITS. And again, just remember, if you do want to speak, you need to hit the button to the right. Thank you.
So moved to approve minutes for June 8th, June 15th, August 17th, based on my review.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second? All right, thank you. Board Member Johnson, we have a proper second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion approved. Thank you. All right, Henry, if you will, if you want to come to the yeah, we'll let you get the spotlight. Go to the front. Certainly, you've spoken to this group in the past, and we'll certainly have you speak to us in greater depth at a future meeting. But certainly, give us some. We do have some new board members as well that were not here initially, especially when the plan, for those that don't know, the initial plan was for this to go in basically in Germantown. Yeah. Years ago, and so obviously location changed. And so if you'll talk to us just briefly about it, and again, thank you so much to you and your staff for having us this phenomenal facility, and you have a great team of people here.
I'm so glad you're here at your museum. So the original plan was for this museum to be located at Rosa Parks and Jefferson, where the State of Tennessee Museum now sits. And after a lot of work and a lot of faith and prayer and back and forth and up and down and changes in mayors and all kinds of things, we were able to get it done right here in this location. So we sit on 56,000 square feet of space that is actually owned by Metro and in some sense managed by the IDB. We have an operating agreement with the IDB to operate a museum in your space. And so that's what we do in this 56,000 square feet. About half of that square footage is gallery space, and then the other half is administrative and back of house space. We were really excited. We of course opened in a pandemic, January of 21, on Martin Luther King Day, and then we celebrated our grand opening on the first federal holiday acknowledged as Juneteenth. So we've had some iconic moments along the way. But we're still really figuring out what normal is. We're still trying to figure out what operating this place means and what it looks like, what it should feel like, what the ups and downs are of operating a museum. So we're still learning as we go. But we've already had probably 130,000 visitors in the latest 12-month period. Wow. Come through the museum. And I think I am optimistic that that's about half of what it will be when we get normal. I think it'll be north of 200,000 or so when we get normal. So that's kind of where we are. So I will stop there and just say welcome. I'm glad you all are here, and thank you all for coming and having your meeting.
Yeah, Yeah, thank you. And I would just say from being here yesterday, just in preparation for today's meeting, it was probably mid-morning. I was surprised, quite frankly, how many people were here, not just because it was it was a random Tuesday.
Right.
But tell me, what are you, just briefly, how do you think this location has worked out ultimately compared to the,
Yeah.
and I know there was some talk about an entrance, I think initially different, there's some talk about that. Tell me how,
Yeah.
the location and then the entrance
I
as
still
well.
have flashbacks about the whole entrance conversation. That was not a happy chapter in the journey to getting this place done. But you slide. um, the location couldn't be better. I don't think there's a better location in the state, frankly, for a museum. We are still working on what I would say is kind of our exterior signage. We own both of the digital boards above our entrances on both Fifth and on Broadway. But we were really excited about that. We spent a lot of money on those digital boards, and they have worked out in some ways better than we anticipated. The problem is that when you're coming to the museum, you're at about 5.5 feet. You're not at 30 feet up. So it's great advertising from the other side of the river, maybe, but it's not so great advertising when you're walking down Fifth Avenue or John Lewis trying to find the museum. So we are in the process of doing some things that are a little bit closer to eye level so that people can find us and see us. And then we also didn't anticipate that Fifth and Broadway would be so signage heavy overall in terms of what is here at the overall Fifth and Broadway complex. And so to some extent, our neighbors have out-signaged us. And so you're able to see that there's a food hall above us much easier in some ways than you can tell there's a museum here. So we're working on that. There was kind of a little kerfluffle about the entrance to the museum. There was some concern that the developer had pivoted the main entrance to the overall Fifth and Broadway project from Broadway to Fifth or to John Lewis. And so when they pivoted the main entrance, if you will, of the overall Fifth and Broadway project, the proposal was to change the main entrance to the museum from Broadway to John Lewis. And after some reluctance, we agreed to it, but there was some concern that because when you come in to the main entrance of the museum, you go down about 6 feet to get here, that some people refer to that in a derogatory term. But we thought it was actually could be treated and handled in a very elegant way. There was still some real concern about us not having a Broadway presence. And so through some relatively easy conversation with the developer, we added a second entrance on Broadway, which has really worked out well. It is a group entrance for us. We use it when school groups come and buses come. There's a curb cut right there on Broadway, and so we kind of call it our VIP entrance on Broadway. And then we went to the next step, and we had a little conversation with the fire marshal that some helped us with to make sure that we actually do have a Broadway address. So our address is not 5 Opry Place, which is many of the addresses at Fifth and Broadway are an Opry Place address, but our address is actually 510 Broadway. And so it took a little convincing of the fire marshal to get that done, but I think for civic inclusion reasons, it made a lot of sense, and so we pushed hard to make that happen. So we're here. So we're at 510 Broadway, and things are going along really well. We're really appreciative of the partnership with you all to get it done.
Well, thank you so much. We look to hearing more. And again, your staff has been amazing and just a wonderful facility. So
Yeah,
thank you. I'm glad to see it work out.
Have a great meeting.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Henry.
Yep.
All right. We will now move to item 3 of the agenda for the public comment period. Is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak? All right, as there is no one wishing to speak, we will close the public comment period. Moving on to item number 4, new business, presentation by grantees of annual performance and approval of annual incentive payments for calendar year end December 31st, 2021. So just quick reference and refresher on this. Today, what's before this body is not approval of the actual incentive grants. Those grants have already been approved. What's before this board is the annual payout. Under statute, with these grants that were previously approved, every year companies have to submit documentation to certify that the jobs are qualified, and those are actually reviewed by an independent. Can you grab? Sorry. Okay, thank you. Those are actually verified by independent auditors, so you receive that paperwork. Currently, there are 5 companies that have these cash grants per employee. Obviously, Philips, HCA, Oracle, Amazon, and Bridgestone. Now, Oracle and Amazon, they have not been to this body yet to present their annual employee, but the actual grants have been approved. Bridgestone is not coming this year. If for those of you that don't know, they sold Firestone, and so their jobs number dropped. So they did not qualify for their job metric, so they did not present this year. And then for Philips and HCA this year, calendar year 2022, so when they come to us next year, that will be the last year of their incentive. So again, some of us were on the board when these were approved, some of us were not. But again, today, you're not approving or voting on any incentive grant. You're approving potentially the annual payout, which again has to come before this board every year. So with that said, I'll have Phillips come up first, and you all have been before us. You can come up to the front, please. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your background on your company, where you're located, just very briefly what made you come to Nashville, and anything you want to share with us about what you're doing in the community as well.
Absolutely.
And demographic information too.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. It is great to once again be in front of you. My name is Brad Lampley. I'm a partner here in the Nashville law firm of Adams and Reese, and also outside counsel to Phillips. It's always great to be before this board and really tell you the story and update you on the story of Phillips in Nashville. Really, we think it's one of success and one of a company that's a worldwide company, global company that came to Nashville and seemingly overnight got fully engaged in the community and is proudly has a workforce now that we think mirrors the diversity of Nashville itself. First, just a brief step back, as Chairman Hodge requested, and just to update those of you that were not on this board in 2017 and may not know the story of how we got here today. Philips, which is obviously based in the Netherlands, did a nationwide search to determine where it was going to locate its global business services hub. Sometimes you'll see that referred to as a center of excellence. And that was going to be a major part of Phillips's operations worldwide and will become a major employer in whatever community was fortunate enough to land the project. Ultimately, that search was really focused on 2 states, Tennessee and Georgia, but really more specific in that 2 cities, Nashville and Atlanta. Atlanta admittedly probably held the upper hand due to the fact that Phillips already had a major presence in Atlanta. And in fact, the Atlanta Hawks basketball arena at the time was called Phillips Arena, so they kind of had a little bit of an advantage. But yes, of course, incentives played a role in getting Phillips to select Nashville. But keep in mind too, Atlanta and the state of Georgia were also offering a very, very significant and competitive incentives package. But in the end, because the hard work was so many, and I'm thinking about Governor Haslam and Mayor Berry and the Tennessee Department of Economic Community Development and the Metro Council and the Chamber, and of course this board itself, Phillips selected Nashville. And we would really like to think, if you think about it, started the wave, was maybe the first global company to start the wave of all the major corporate relocations that we're seeing here today. We would like to think it's right on the tail end of the Predator Stanley Cup run, and there was just so much excitement in the city at the time, and we think Phillips, it just made a lot of sense, and we think it was the right city at the right time. Since that time, Phillips has more than delivered on its promises. It did not just move a number of existing employees from around the company to town. It relied heavily on the local workforce. We held a number of job fairs to attract local talent, including holding job fairs in areas such as North Nashville and actively recruiting in those areas. With that first hiring wave, 19 out of every 20 Phillips employees in the first hiring wave were all local residents. Fast forward to today, we are very proud of the numbers that you have in front of you, which reflect the efforts that Phillips has gone to in order to have a diverse workforce. Three particular numbers I'd like to point out as takeaways. The first is 60%. That's the percentage of local Phillips employees that are women. The second is 28%. That's the percentage of local Phillips employees that are African American. And the third is 52%. That's the percentage of local Phillips employees that live in Davidson County. So,
Read those, sorry.
yes, 60% African American, 28% are, 60% local Phillips employees that are women, my apologies. 28% African American, and then 52% live in Davidson County. So this is a company that has really moved to Nashville, established a major presence here, hired locally, and a majority of those jobs are living in Davidson County where they are supporting the local economy. And as you're about to hear, those employees are giving back and working to make our Nashville community even better. Yes, it's a great success story. It's one we're proud to tell. And, you know, we hear a lot of talk about incentives. I would argue that this is the good side of that, and frankly, what incentives are designed to do, to lure companies like this that are going to make this type of an impact in the community. I'm joined by one of the major architects for that success, Steve Power. Steve is the Vice President of Global Business Services North America for Phillips, and Steve can provide more detail and answer any questions you may have. Steve, I'll move out of the way.
Thank you. Thanks, Brad. So just some extra flavor, I think, that we wanted to bring in. As you've heard, I think we've been successful. You'll notice the numbers that we submitted this year were slightly down. There's two reasons for that. One is we actually did a divestment at a company level to Connect America, and they subleased one of our floors. So strictly speaking, they're not part of Phillips anymore, but they're still employees. They're still in the building. To the spirit of the grant, they're still it's still generating that employment in the city. And in addition to the numbers that we have in the submission, we have close to 100 open requisitions, as well as a normal, dynamic flow of new people leaving, people being hired. So the numbers have stayed stable. We've consistently been increasing the number of functions that we do at the Nashville office. For example, we migrated some work from an outsourced provider in Canada and moved those roles into Nashville. That was an addition of 40 that happened earlier this year. And I know Brad mentioned Georgia. We've announced that our Alpharetta site is closing with the end of the lease there. There's nothing been announced about what will happen with Nashville, but naturally we'll see some numbers increase as a result of that as well. We are very present in local universities. For example, we're on the the board of the TSU supply chain program. So we have a number of active members giving back to help the students develop there. We are building this consistent profile of adding new campus recruits each year. We had a successful intern program this summer that already people from interns have accepted roles for next year. And we have a close relationship with Fort Campbell and a very active employee resource group, really dealing with veterans and their spouses to help them in that pathway back into employment. We think it's a great program to bring people into Phillips, actually. Then just finally to touch on community events. Recently there was the American Heart Association. We were part of the walk that happened then. Our Black Employee Resource Group recently held a program to aid literacy at the Morale School. And other teams, we have what we call FLAIR, which is our young in-career group. They've held events that, for example, the rescue mission is sort of flavour of some of the things that have happened recently. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So one question, average salary for hires, what is that?
Let me just check if we have that exact number on the... It's certainly in excess of the number that's required under the grant. I'm not sure. Oh, sorry, here it is. We have 66,500.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then where's your, for people that don't know, where's your office located?
We're in what's now called Phillips Plaza, which is the opposite side of the DoubleTree. So it's the old Bank of America building.
Okay, awesome. And then, at least for me, and then I'll turn it over to my fellow colleagues in case they have any questions. Talk a little bit more about your internship program, because obviously that's a great way to get people into the company, but giving back to young people as well, giving the opportunity. But then obviously it's kind of a pipeline, quite frankly, for you for future hires. So talk a little bit more about your internship program and the universities that you're focused on recruiting for in that program.
Yeah, I think those came from the Knoxville, and forgive me, I always get the letters wrong. The State University at Knoxville, isn't it? Yeah.
Really, the main two are TSU and also UT.
Yes, yeah.
Steve's actually not from
You might have
England, he's actually from Middle Tennessee, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, exactly. So we have two portions. We hired in, I think it was the 29 graduates for 2022. We had 5 interns join us in addition to that. So the intern program, which we're then hiring for 23, we put them in real jobs for 13 weeks. We held events to give them the flavor of how you develop a career, that, a sequence of executive meetings kind of things to help them build careers.
So like a mentorship.
Yeah, almost, but also as part of a program to give them the experience of working. We got some really astonishing numbers. We had one lady who was part of the inside sales team who delivered over 600,000 in sales in 13 weeks. That we were astonished.
Yeah, you're hired when you graduated.
Exactly. We had another one who redesigned the information we give to our service customers, the guide of how to get services. So this is now in use across the country. We had a third one who was part of our HR organization, who basically reorganized all of the I-9 certifications and helped us clear up a lot of legacy from when we moved over. So these were real jobs that these interns were doing, and I was astonished at how impressive they were in that 13 weeks.
I hope the intern that did the sales qualified for the bonus program.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're seeking to get her on board. I can trust you.
Two other things I add, if you don't mind, Steve, is one of them is we actually sit on the board at TSU on the governance of supply chain management.
Yep.
That's one of them.
Yep.
And then the other thing I think is it's really neat, and I don't know how many companies do this. I know my firm does not, and I wish we did. They get 32 hours of basically paid volunteer time. So however you want to invest your time in the community, you've got essentially almost a week of paid time to do that. And I think that's pretty significant. And we've seen that pay dividends, obviously, with the literacy program in East Nashville and so forth.
Yeah, that's really neat. And obviously for people that work, it's wonderful to volunteer. Great, but you still have your work. So that really gives people the opportunity if they really want to do that. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll turn it over to my board members now. I'll start here to my left. Board Member Forrester, any questions or comments for Phillips?
No, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to my left? Board Member Davis?
Just a quick question on your interns. Were those all from UT or were some of them from TSU as well? I missed that.
I think the intern programs were all UT Knoxville, but the other one, the one that we're on the board for TSU, excuse me, I always get the
acronyms.
The acronyms wrong. We were hiring mainstream graduates from there. Because it was the first year on the intern program, we started with one college, but we actively, as we've talked about, are on the board of the TSU program, and we've got people there in the university teaching them what it's like after their courses are finished, and we're, obviously seeking to hire the best we can from the program.
Thank you.
Board Member Davis? Board Member Johnson? Vice Chair Siegel?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's take a look here just to make sure we're all on the same page. So again, this is a cash grant per employee, $500 per employee. It's a multi-year grant. So if you recall, Phillips was here last year, and assuming they hit the metrics next year, they'll be before us again next year. But this is for calendar year 2021. So there were 653 qualified jobs that met the definition of qualified jobs. $500 per employee, that equals to the grant payment of $326,500, confirmed with Rhonda Petley in Finance, Metro Finance. Is everything in order with the number? Did you, and they provided the third party audit as well for the jobs too, correct?
Everything appears to be in order.
All right, thank you. With that said, I'll entertain a motion to approve the annual incentive payment for Phillips Holding USA, Inc. for calendar year in December 31st, 2021.
Move approval as
All right,
stated.
thank you. We have a motion from Board Member Davis. Do we have a second? All right, I'll go with, there's a double play here, but I'll go with Board Member Oakley. Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed, say nay. All right, thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Appreciate it. Thanks for all the help. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, next we'll have members from HCA. If you all want to come to the front, thank you all. Please make sure you state your name and introduce yourself and roll with the company, or if you're external to the organization. So, and again, kind of the same thing. Tell us about, for some of us that were not on the board then, obviously HCA has been in Nashville for many years, but there was some office expansion. So give us some background on that. And again, Vice Chair Siegel, were you on the board when we met at HCA? So maybe that was, were you on the, so it was, maybe it was just Board Member Oakley and I. Yeah, this was probably 2017. 2017. So we actually had a board meeting at the office there on Charlotte, right there in the Gulch. So
Right.
talk to a little bit about that. And again, this calendar year is your, 2022 is your last calendar year for this grant, correct?
This is our sixth payment. So
Right, so next year will be the last when you
Yes.
come before us?
Yes.
Yep, so you'll come before us one more time as long as the jobs numbers qualify.
that's fair.
Okay, well, if you all will introduce yourselves first, and then, we can get into, give us some background and community and why you want to expand and all that great jazz.
Good morning, and thank you for having us. And I'm Debbie Chastain. I'm Managing Director of Tax.
And I'm Miles Osafo-J, Division Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for TriStar.
And I'm Steve Jasper with Bassberry and Simmons, outside counsel at HCA.
And the package you have before you is for WCC Properties LLC, which is an HCA subsidiary. And for the 2022 city cash hiring grant, it's $1,104,500 for the annual statement that we submitted in February 15th. As you said, it's the sixth payment of seven. 2,209 incremental Davidson County employees as of 12/31/2021. And there's two locations. I'll talk to you just a little bit more about what those locations are and what we do there. But for the two locations, 1,473 for the Capitol View location, which is where you had the board meeting.
Yep.
And then 736 for a location called Health Park. And 40% of those employees live in Davidson County. Average wages are $110,000. And like I said, the request that you have in front of you really covers, or the grant covers, three locations: the Capitol View location, and the Health Park, which is the old AIG building, and Sky Park, which is the old Dell building. We still lease part of that to Dell. However, we're seeking incentives for two of the locations, and I'll cover that in a second. And Capitol View, you probably know, is located in the North Gulch area, and it serves as the headquarters for three of the HCA subsidiaries that were expanding at that point in time and really could have located multiple places, because most of these are shared service type entities from a headquarter perspective. So it serves as the headquarters for Sarah Cannon, which is the Global Cancer Institute for HCA. And Parallon, it's a leading provider of healthcare business and operations services, and Health Trust, which is a group purchasing organization that delivers purchasing solutions for HCA and a lot of non-HCA healthcare facilities. And the capital view represents a $230 million investment made by the company. And we were the anchor tenant there, I think really kind of helping to transform that North Gulch area as it looks today. 17 stories, 560 square feet, with 30 square feet of retail space and an on-site daycare. At the time we did the construction, our DBE numbers were 32%, which was above the goal of 20% that we jointly set with Metro and the company. And something
Can you, just for maybe people that don't know, go into detail on that, please? On your
Yes.
DBE numbers?
Yes, 32%.
Okay.
And that was above the goal of 20%. And really, that took a lot of coordination from the HCA design and construction team to do that, because we had to contract individually with with the subs instead of contracting through the general contractor. So I really applaud kind of, all that the team did, and a lot of help with, people locally too, to make those numbers a success. And I think we might have been one of the first agreements that came through that had any sort of goal from a DBE standpoint. So we're proud of those numbers.
Thank you.
And something new, and you may know this, but in January of 2022, we started the first classes for Galen College of Nursing on the 4th floor of Capitol View. So for anyone that was there, when you were there, you probably located through, we gave you a tour. I think you might have went through the classroom area. So we're utilizing those classrooms there. And we're utilizing 47,700 square feet on the Capitol View campus. And we think bringing one of the highest levels of nursing education to Nashville. We have simulation labs there, which I think are just amazing to go into the simulation labs, because it helps the nurse transition from the classroom to the bedside. And we have a diverse population of students there. We have over 200 students right now. This is their first classes, and 20 employees on Capitol View. And we train a large number of nurses who are above the typical age for a nursing student, and often launching a second career. Almost 60% of the students are first-time members of their families to attend college, with an average student age of 32. 45% of our Nashville students are eligible for the federal Pell Grants that provides need-based grants. And the student mix, 90% female, 43% people of color, and 30% Black African American.
This is for the students.
That's for the students. Which we're very proud to bring that to our community to really kind of grow the nursing supply across the country.
Would you mind repeating that number of first-time college students?
60% of the students are first members of the families to attend college. Average student age, 32. Student mix, I covered that. And we're offering 3 programs. We're offering the Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, a BSN, Associate Degree in Nursing, an ADN, a Licensed Practical Nursing to Associate Degree in Nursing Bridge, which is an LPN to ADN Bridge. And that really kind of covers the Capitol View locations, unless there's any questions specific to that location, which we can take here in a minute if you.
Yeah, we can keep going, that's fine.
And then Health Park, which is, on Old Hickory Boulevard, was formerly known as AIG. We acquired that in 2014 from AIG. It features 2 building campuses, 275K square foot of office space. We spent $70 million renovating those buildings. It was completed in 2018. And it's home to our HCA Healthcare Physician Services Group. And then Sky Park, we are not asking for incentives on Sky Park because we acquired it from Dell in 2014. There's 346 square feet, with Dell still leasing about 125 square feet. What we've done there is use it as a backup function, as a support function for IT, and some of the other locations already in Davidson County. So we've rotated people in and out of it as we've done renovations across the campus and for more of a backup. So we really would have been hard to kind of track new jobs there, so we just have not done that and not asking for incentives. And then I want to introduce Miles because he's going to share more demographic information and discuss some of the things we're doing on the diversity and inclusion front.
Thank you.
Debbie, thank you, and board members, appreciate the opportunity to share a little about the progress that we made with our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, as well as some of the work that we're doing in the community as well. But first, I want to start with demographics. So the demographics of qualifying jobs at Capitol View and Health Park as of December 31st, 2021, approximately 49% are female, 20% are people of color, 9% are Black or African American. In Nashville, women comprise 71% of our workforce, and people of color comprise 26% of our workforce. I know we're talking about local numbers, but I also just wanted to mention we are proud that enterprise-wide, women comprise 78% of our workforce, and people of color comprise 43% of our workforce. Part of our workforce strategy, just getting into some of our DEI work, part of our workforce strategy includes having a robust, intentional structure of accountability around our work to ensure that we are making meaningful steps forward. One of the things that we've done, we've stood up division DEI councils, and they are now active in all 15 of our regional divisions across the company. And we're already seeing some significant momentum and improvement because of the establishment of those councils. We've also added diversity, equity, and inclusion director roles like mine to cover those 15 regional divisions to make sure that we have a dedicated focus at the local level within our divisions and within our facilities as well. I want to give you one example of one of the councils that we've stood up that are helping to, number one, provide accountability, but also provide some good ideas and feedback for the types of programs that we roll out within our DEI strategy. One example, we've stood up a Black Senior Leadership Council. It's comprised of a group of Black senior leaders who meet with our Chief Diversity Officer, Sherry Neal, and our CEO on a quarterly basis to discuss critical topics, to have open and transparent dialogue around our work. One of the recommendations from this council was that we stand up an HCA Healthcare sponsorship program. And that program was launched this year, 2022, for a select group of Black colleagues, 60% of whom are women, to drive advancement in our leadership positions across the company. So this phased approach will expand in scope to include more demographics as the program progresses. So just one example of how our councils are, number one, holding us accountable and giving us some good ideas. On the colleague front, we've strengthened our DEI, since we've strengthened our DEI strategy in 2020, we've seen a lot of notable increases in our external hires who are people of color. I just want to give you some of those numbers as well.
Amazing what happens, when there's a strategy, right? When you're proactive and,
Absolutely.
There's talented people everywhere from all walks of life, but sometimes you have to look in the right places, quite frankly.
Right. And provide some opportunities for advancement. I'll touch on
Sure.
a couple of those here in a second as well. And so just the first half of 2022, we've already seen great progress from our 2021 external hiring numbers of people of color. We've seen a 29% increase in management and supervision roles, 6% increase in nursing roles, 107% increase in non-clinical roles, and a 23% increase in clinical roles. We are also continuing to diversify our leadership pipeline by increasing representation in our executive development programs and our local investments as well. So a couple more metrics, numbers to give you. In 2021, we hired our most diverse executive residency program class yet. So this is a program that feeds right into our leadership levels within our facilities. In 2021, so 57% people of color and 57% female for that executive residency program class. Overall, we increased people of color and female representation in leadership development programs by 22% in 2021. So that's across all of our leadership development programs that target our different leadership levels within our company.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Earlier you described people of color and then Black, and then now you're doing people of color. Is that combining those two?
That is combining those two, yeah. For those local numbers, we just wanted to pull out that our Black colleagues as well.
And so when you say people of color, do you have that broken down? Not that I need it. Do you are familiar with our demographic shift happening in different parts of not just the United States, but here in Nashville, so that reflective of the population that you serve?
Yeah, so we do have that number broken out. I do not have those numbers with me, but I can certainly get
No,
those
it's
to you.
okay.
Yeah.
So people of color are going to encompass everyone?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
You said the black was 9%, right?
Yes.
I would like the people of color broken out too. We see
It was
what's happening
22%
in
people.
California. People of color is kind of a harmful term.
Well, is it a harmful term, you think?
I think when you lump people in one big category, subpopulations get overlooked, like kind of what's happening in California.
Sure, and completely understand that as well. You know, people of color, I think for the purposes of this meeting, just to give you the raw numbers, but when we look at our programmings, we do break those down by each
And it was just
sub-demographic.
clarification on how it was that way.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah, go ahead. And just to make sure, some
Yeah.
correct questions from the board. The 20% number too, that you gave for Nashville, that was based on, that's not your total employees, that was the qualified jobs, correct?
Capital View and
Okay.
Health Park, yes, sir.
Then-
Just those locations.
And then out of that, if you break that down, 9%
Yes,
African-American or black?
yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, but just to continue on that point, even with that sponsorship program, right? So this first iteration of that program targeted black colleagues because that's what the numbers told us we need to target. But we are expanding that to include other specific demographics as we look at making more advancements in that way. So we are intentional about breaking that out as well as a company. I want to continue on with the executive development programs. In 2021, our local investments. In 2021, we announced a $10 million investment over the next 3 years in expanding strategic partnerships with historically black colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions as well. Our partnerships with HBCUs and HSIs allow us to bridge the gap in black, Hispanic, and Latinx representation in healthcare leadership positions, a challenge our industry faces as a whole. And we're excited that $3 million of those funds are being invested right here in Nashville. So we've just recently announced new partnerships with local HBCUs, Tennessee State University and Fisk University. Our partnership with TSU will support students enrolled in the Dr. Levi Watkins Junior Institute Accelerated Medical Pathway Program and the Department of Computer Science within the College of Engineering. Our partnership with Fisk creates a unique pathway for Fisk degree coursework to transfer to Galen College of Nursing, which Debbie just mentioned, allowing students to go directly into a BSN program. So really unique partnership that we just announced with them. And both partnerships will help students excel with degrees that lead to advancement and growth and also address, again, the diversity of our healthcare leadership pipeline. So our company, we are really proud of the work that we've done with our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, the intentional focus that we've had in the work that not only impact our patients, but our colleagues and as well as our communities as well. This is an evolving journey, but we're excited to continue to share with this group as we move forward.
Yep, thank you.
I have one question. You had mentioned the DBE goals you use for construction at Capitol View.
Yes.
Was that 32%, and you had a joint goal with Metro of 20%.
That's correct.
Just curious, are you still going back to the well of those DBEs for continued maintenance of the facility or any other work that may be needed?
We do, we actually, through our health trust purchasing group, we actually go to, we make sure that we've included contractors, et cetera, and that we're including a diverse group. It's just that on this one, we knew we had reporting to do, so we shared those numbers. I don't have the other numbers with me, but we must have them.
Okay. And then for Health Park, did you guys, were you intentional on DBE goals there as well, even absent an
Our
agreement with
health
Metro?
park was more of a renovation, so
Okay.
I don't have those numbers with me.
Okay.
If you need those, I can get those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Start here to my left again, Board Member Forster. Any questions or comments for HCA?
Yeah, you may have already said it, but I wondered how many students are in the nursing programs?
Right now, it's our first year of the nursing program, and it's just a little over 200 students.
Okay.
We hope to expand that first year.
And how does the tuition compare to other nursing programs in the universities here in town?
Let me look.
If
I think
have
we might
numbers,
have.
Comparison, I don't know if we have numbers, how they compare.
We have some information on tuition. Okay, so I know that our employees with at least 90 days of service can attend the the nursing program, the RN, and the BSN with 0 out-of-pocket expenses.
Oh.
And then we provide up to $5,250 in tax-free reimbursement each year for higher education tuition expense up to a lifetime maximum of 21. And that doesn't just cover nursing.
For employees.
Yeah, that's for employees in general. I don't know that we have comparisons, but we offer people the opportunity for free tuition.
Do they keep working for you when they're? Yeah, like, is it like a night program, right, so they can still have income, or do they have to stop working to?
Yeah, it can be an online program.
Okay.
No, they don't need to. That's
Okay.
a great question.
Yeah.
They do not need to start.
Yeah, I believe a number of our current employees are going through that program.
Right,
again
okay,
now,
right.
so.
Yep.
And we're really hoping this helps just introduce the nursing increase the nursing pipeline across the country. We have other locations for Galen School of Nursing too, but that's one of the ones we're
Yeah, I would say it's interesting too, the average age you said is 32 years. So that's career change. I don't know many people at age 32 that haven't worked already. So, I think that's something else too, for folks that are maybe changing careers, and obviously a very needed, a field that there's always a need in, right? So great career for stabilization, but also to serve people. So excellent. Board Member Forrest, any other questions or comments? Board Member Oakley.
I just want to state I was a former HCA Southern Hills board member, and being that is in the most diverse Hispanic community, but also the expansion into the Antioch area where it's the most global community and most diverse in our Davidson County as well as our Middle Tennessee. Those leaders that have seen that as an opportunity to get diverse nurses that reflect the community, from bringing in doctors from other recruitment to understand the people they serve. But it also the nurses and the administration. And I remember Tom Osborne, who's down in Chattanooga, saw it. I joke about he's a Southern boy from Alabama, and he came to Nashville and he understood the demographic shift in his hospital and changed things. And then recently, Joanna Conley, I know she moved on, but being your expansion in Antioch and understanding that area of Southern Davidson County and our diverse community, hopefully continues to go up the change. I know your Miami HCA is huge, but it has to seep into Madison and all the other areas where we see the growth of our demographic shift. So I know you probably know that, but just wanted to share the positive, but then you don't see enough, and I'm sure that's what you're working on, so thank you.
Yeah, try to be intentional in places. Just appreciate the Southern Hills calling it. Continue to be our most diverse facility. The leadership is very intentional about the work that they do. I grew up in Antioch, so I'm familiar with Southern Hills.
Right there off Nolensville Road. Absolutely. I grew up in Antioch as well. So, excellent. Board Member Oakley, any other comments or questions? Start here to my right. Board Member Davis, comments or questions for HCA?
Nothing really specific to you guys. Thank you for all the diversity efforts, and then the wages look really good, and, definitely a good report on the jobs.
With the cost of housing,
For sure.
between
This
rent
town-
and interest rates, you need $110,000 for salary.
Just real quick, Chair, before so we don't have to have discussion after any motions, is for HCA, are we also doing only the $500 per job for X amount of jobs? Or there was a lot about facilities and stuff in the packet. I was making sure, or was this deal a little bit different? I forget.
So there were multiple facilities, there's qualified jobs for multiple facilities. One of those was the Capitol View, which was built. They talked about one facility, I think it's Sky, that's not included in the qualified jobs, but the number that we have today, which is the 1,104,500, that's for
Yes.
qualified jobs.
So 2,209 qualified jobs, I guess,
Yes.
if I did that correct.
Yes.
Calculator.
1473 at Capitol View, 736 at Health Park.
Gotcha. Great. Well, yeah, happy to, on both these grants, keep our promises, and, appreciate all the reporting and all the efforts. So, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Davis. I thought you did that in your head. Board Member Johnson, any other comments or questions for HCA? All right, thank you. Vice Chair Siegel.
No, I asked what I would ask. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all, and again, Capitol View, it's been interesting to see how much Capitol View went from 5 years ago when we had the meeting there to all the development around Capitol View, since your facility went up. So very interesting. Question for just general question. Obviously, we're kind of in a new world, very different from 5 years ago. How are you all doing with employees as far as working at home with your office? Are you going to a hybrid? Is that going to be permanent? Just curious how that's working. Because obviously your office, brand new, 5 years old,
Right.
pretty, from what I recall, is pretty, that's Class A office space. So just curious how you're utilizing that
Yeah.
now and what you're doing with workers moving forward in this kind of new world, I guess.
Well, I know that we are, from the top down, from our CEO, he's been committed to kind of an in-person work environment, but that provides, thinks that provides a good environment for building culture, teamwork, et cetera. And we also support our hospitals and our facilities, and they continue to operate 24/7 while, during the pandemic. Back in May of 2022, we started, we made the decision to start bringing colleagues back at that time. And all leaders in many of our office staff, I'm speaking specifically, and this is generally across HCA, but I'm speaking specifically to these locations. All leaders in many of our office staff are generally on campus 5 days per week. And we provided flexibility for work groups to determine the most effective models there. And most people work from home 1 to 2 days a week. Now, we do have some people that worked from home before the pandemic.
Sure.
Continue to work from home, but for the most part, our leaders are back in 5 days a week, and all of our team members, they give each work group the opportunity to go and say what works best for that work group, and try to have central days that everyone's in the office for collaboration.
Sure.
And usually ends up with being 1 or 2 days a week that they're able to work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
That is evolving. I always wondered what other companies are doing in that space too, and continuing to watch our employee engagement surveys.
Absolutely.
See what we should do.
Absolutely. It's a different time, for sure. So, well, thank you. And appreciate your efforts and for being forthcoming with a lot of information. I think it's great information for this board, to hear. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the annual incentive payment to HCA Holdings of $1,104,500. All right, so we have a motion by Board Member Oakley, second by Board Member Davis. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay? All right, motion carried. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it. All right, moving to the next item, item 5, discussion of the Do Better bill. Again, board, this is not anything that we need to vote on today. We're fortunate that we have Board Member Davis here, who was the lead sponsor of the Do Better bill when he was on council, and several years ago, obviously before I knew, that we would be serving together on the board, Board Member Davis came and spoke to us just about the Do Better bill. And to give some of the board members some background, these companies that just came before us, they came in before the Do Better bill was enacted. So when I first started on the board, for example, we didn't get the type of demographic information that we receive today, because quite frankly, some companies were really not very enthusiastic about sharing that information. And again, it was before the Do Better bill. And so this board, when I first started on this board, we asked those questions just because we want to know if companies are getting taxpayer dollars, $500 employee, well, do the employees live in Davidson County? What does your workforce look like? What does the income look like? So those were questions that we asked, but again, those were not tied to the actual incentives because they came before the Do Better bill. And part of that is why the reasoning for the Do Better bill came up. So I put together a summary, just some highlights of the Do Better bill. Obviously, there was a recent amendment to the Do Better bill. And though the original Do Better bill was not included, but I did print out a couple in case you want to look through it. I'll pass those around. But I'll turn it over to Board Member Davis if you feel comfortable on the fly, just giving us some background on why and do you think it achieved what you were trying to achieve? And then we'll take any questions, but again, there's no vote, no vote item on this, but thought it was a good time to have this discussion because it fell in line with the Metro incentives. And next year, and subsequently, for example, Amazon and Oracle, those deals were approved after the Do Better bill. So those would fall in line with the Do Better bill. Board Member
Sure.
Davis, all yours.
Yeah, I think, and I didn't prepare anything really for this, so, I was looking at my old notes this morning. It was basically 4 years ago, almost 5, I guess, that we started this discussion and passed the bill towards the beginning of 18, I believe. And the notes you have in the packet are definitely part of it. I think the environment at the time, we were certainly, between mayor's office and council, I'd been on council, 6 years by then, 7 years. It was certainly an environment of, we don't want to do these deals anymore. Why are we giving everything away? That sort of thing. I don't know if you remember back, like how contested every one of those was getting. And, just started thinking about it a lot those last, at the end of the Dean administration and then beginning of the Berry administration of, I think at the neighborhood level, being a district council member, people would be a little more open to them if we just kind of had more transparency. We knew what we were getting involved in. It wasn't just, it didn't feel like backroom deal making, that kind of thing. And then, of course, you had to be careful about what you're doing because we knew the state would step in and kind of step on us, as we always would say, about trying to do too much or trying to require too much, in exchange for incentives, that sort of thing. So we had to be very nimble about what we're doing. And I worked together with Stand Up Nashville a lot on this. A lot of you know that group. That was sort of the first thing they were really involved in from a legislative level, I believe, at least at council. But yeah, just really wanted to kind of figure out, well, what could we do? What were sort of the minimum things we could do? And so, it ended up being more of an informational bill ordinance, but the goal was, if you're requiring these companies to give you this information, they're going to think about and really, you're going to get the type of companies that are really going to be concerned with these issues of transparency, that sort of thing. And then just having them fill out information, you're going to, they might be better actors, per se, I guess is the best way to describe it. So as you stated in here, the things we knew we could, again, ask for without the state, getting involved, like number of jobs obviously created. Is there a workforce plan? Are you doing any apprenticeships, that sort of thing? Any OSHA violations you've had and that kind of thing. So again, you're just getting information. You're not, requiring that they're OSHA 10,000 certified. That's where we were worried about the state, but you're getting information about OSHA. So you're trying to obviously, get reported on, okay, are these bad actors and that sort of thing. I actually dug out some of kind of the talking points or whatever, some of the information we were having from back at that time, which is just interesting to look at. But what does the bill do? Everything you said there, council would get these answers to these key questions. And of course, the ID, we would as well, but especially by the time it went before council, before we approved the deals. There was also this run up. The politics of it was, it just kept coming to us at the last minute, and it was just like, approve this or not, and there was all this pressure, that sort of thing. So we would have information in time. And what it would lead to would be transparency. The public would have more information about these deals, higher standards from companies and or contractors. There were two different angles with that, in that we were concerned with the jobs, all these jobs that we're talking about today, like the $500 jobs. But if you remember, Bridgestone project was like even building a building too. So what if there was a construction aspect to any kind of incentives? So that was a huge deal. And we knew, I was understanding it was only that was a rare kind of deal we would work, but if we did a construction aspect of it, then even more so, we wanted to know those were gonna be good jobs. So higher standards and that sort of thing. Safety was a big issue. We'd had some deaths, on construction jobs in this boom phase of Nashville, so safety as well. So, that was a lot of discussion. In the sausage making, you probably don't remember this, but in second reading, there was a concern that it was gonna strip power away from the IDB. So just a fun fact there. And I actually made an amendment on second reading. And it, you know, with the chamber had those concerns. I'm sure the IDB was concerned at the time. But we wanted to make sure that we weren't stripping any power from the IDB and it wasn't just dragging more power up to council, that sort of thing. So we made sure it was clarified that it wasn't gonna take the power to do pilots or TIFs from the IDB. But if it's coming to us, we just want this information, basically, so. Probably other fun things to talk about, but that was the general thing, and then as far as is it working, you know, I mean, we've got information from a few employers now, and we will have ongoing information from them. And, you know, I think it did what we set out for it to do, but, we just haven't done as many deals, so there's that as well. But I think when we do these deals, we're getting more information.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it was really interesting because I was on the board when that was coming up, obviously, and there were certainly, I think in general, people wanted more information. They wanted to hold these companies accountable. But I also recall there was some concern that, you know, hey, other cities might not be putting these types of restrictions, right? And so potentially it would hinder, you know, companies, it would cause companies to shy away, like what, we go to Nashville, we have to do this, OSHA. And there were, at the time, I recall there was some concern in some circles around that. And it was really interesting. And I just recall when we had Alliance Bernstein, again, they have not started their clock. I think next year will be the first year that they come before us potentially. But it was really interesting when they came, because they came after the Do Better bill. And at the time when their representatives came to our IDB meeting, they were like, yeah, we were fine with this. We're fine with being accountable. We think we should be doing that. And it was really interesting. And one item I do want to point out, and this is in the packet that the board received, is there is language in this Do Better bill that allows the council to terminate these incentive agreements with the majority of vote. It doesn't mean that they will, but it's some language that says they have the ability. And I remember that was one of the questions I asked for Alliance Bernstein, because obviously one of the reasons you might choose Nashville is the incentive piece. What are your concerns with it potentially being stripped away if you fail to comply? And their kind of basic response is, well, we know what we're getting into. We're willing, we understand, and we'll comply. So really interesting. I think once they do come before us, it'll be interesting to talk more about that as well. But I guess I say all that to say, for those that were concerned, Alliance Bernstein still came, and obviously they're right next door, thriving. So
Sure.
anyway, thank you for doing that. I figured you could do that on the fly. Any questions? Again, it's not something to vote, but just thought it was a great time to kind of have this discussion around it. Any questions or comments? I'll start here to my left. Anything here to my right?
I wasn't as visible.
Sure. Yeah, worked with Odessa, Kelly at the time a lot, and Ethan was heavily involved. And there were supposed to be like sequels. I tried to do the Do Even Better bill towards the end of the term.
You didn't get that one
Well,
squeaked
we
in, huh?
needed to clarify some things. There were some things that we thought we could make a little better about this bill, but then it was opening up too many cans of worms. And then I did pass something at the very end of the term we called the Better Procurement Bill. And another part of the goal, you know, we spend a lot of money in contracts with Metro every year. And that started it. I think Council Member Sandra Sepulveda, I'm pronouncing that right. She took that a little further this term, but at the end of my term, I did a bill called the Better Procurement Bill to do a similar thing, and we could actually do more because it's our tax dollars that we're spending out of procurement. But the state still won't let you do certain things. Once again, even on your own procurement, don't get me on that soapbox, but we did a bill that started a similar kind of requirement for metro procurement, so.
Thank you for sharing that, and obviously, this is in the summary packet as well. The bill was recently amended, the Do Better bill, to require that companies report whether they provide employees with assistance. That includes covering the cost of transportation, et cetera, to obtain medical treatment that is only available outside of the employee's home state. This includes travel for reproductive health care treatment, such as abortion. So just want to point that out to the board. Thank you all for the discussion. We're going to take a very real quick 3 to 5 minute intermission before we move to the next item on the agenda. If you come out and then go to the left, restrooms are to the left if you need to go. Thank you all. All right, thank you everyone for your patience. We will reconvene. Here is now 11:26. And we are on item number 6, discussion of the Madison Station Economic Impact Plan. Couple pointers again, or reminders really, for today on this matter. This is not a matter that the board is voting on today. Again, to be clear, no voting today. But this is an economic impact plan. Again, if you refer to the agenda summary, you have some information about this. And just again, a refresher for the board, historically, there's been 2 deals similar to this. One is for the Bellevue Mall redevelopment in West Nashville. For those of us that are from Nashville, very familiar with Bellevue, remember the old Bellevue Mall, and then it went basically vacant. Sears held on for a couple of years by itself. And if you go out there now, it's amazing to see what's happened with the movie theater, the Preds facility, the retail, really transformed that area. And again, that was redeveloped with through an economic impact plan that was approved by this board here early 2000s. And certainly when I came on board, there were a couple of amendments to that. The latest economic impact plan that this board passed was the Oracle deal in spring of 2021. Some of us were on the board then, some of us were not, but that is the most recent one. This proposed deal is there's some differences, which we'll get into, but again, that's the most recent example of an economic impact plan that came before this board. What I'd like to do again for the board today is really, the purpose of this meeting is to really give the board an opportunity to understand the project, the history of the development, why it's needed. Obviously, we've got some guests here that can speak to that. And then we'll certainly spend some time talking about the TIF process, tax increment financing, but we can get into that in greater detail at a future meeting. Well, again, with these types of deals that we don't necessarily do a lot of, what I've tried to do, and I said this during our State of IDB presentation back in June, is to have multiple meetings so that, again, understand the project, don't feel rushed, and we'll come back, and what other questions you have, we'll go into greater detail. And for those of you who recall, we did this about a year ago with the Century Farms infrastructure deal. So that's really the focus of today. So there will probably be questions, further questions about TIFs and process, and we'll get into that a little bit today. But again, more of the focus on today is just understanding the project, and we'll get into that at a later meeting. But again, big picture, just like the Oracle deal, should this board approve the economic impact plan, it then has to be approved by Metro Council. Okay, so this is still a two-step process. So anyway, well, I'll stop there. Obviously, we have local council person in Madison, Councilmember Van Reese. So if you will, first of all, thank you for coming, and very interested here. And board, I'm very big on pictures. I do apologize. I did get out to this site, which is located in really the heart of Madison, right on Gallatin Road. So it's a major corridor. I've actually been to several of the stores there. Bank of America, Dollar General's there. It's also an axe throwing place there. If you've never done axe throwing, it's still amazing that you can drink while you're throwing axes, but it's really, that is really fun activity to do. But anyway, I got there to take some pictures for you all, but it was getting dark, so I did print off a couple of Google images just so you can see what the development looks like currently. It's 32 acres. I'll pass those around, if you will. But with that said, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Van Rees, and again, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Chair. I am so excited about being here this morning because we get to talk a little bit about a place that I've lived in since 1990. I actually moved to Nashville in 1986, ended up in an apartment in Bellevue, and was real excited about the mall getting built. That's how long I've been around, so the mall existed and then came down and then back again. So I've seen a lot of change, obviously, in Nashville and as a Madisonian. District 8 that we know now actually starts in North Englewood, goes through Maplewood and extends up into Madison. About 60% of the folks that I represent live north of Briley Parkway. Shout out to former council member Anthony Davis. We served together, and my first term was his second term, and we did a lot of work along this area together. And he and Bill Pridemore and I were known as the 789 team, so it's good to see you.
That must have been hard serving with this guy.
It was difficult. You know, having both those guys on either side of me was something. But a little bit of history about Madison. By 1830, 3 stagecoach lines were running out of town along Haysboro Road, now Gallatin Pike. As the town grew, the Thomas Stratton family would have a son, Madison, who, at the age of 21, would continue to expand his land holdings and become a leader in the community. As a large landowner, Madison Stratton sold a portion of his land so that the state could build a railway line connecting Bowling Green, Kentucky to Clarksville, Tennessee. The station was built and it was named Madison Station in honor of Madison Stratton. The station later became known as Amqui Station. This past May 21st was the 164th anniversary of the charter of the post office called Madison Station in 1857. In Dr. Guy Bachman's book, Using the 1880 Census, Madison is described as a community of farmers, laborers, servants, people at home and keeping house, youngsters who were at school, a few tradesmen, a handful of professional people, a couple of hucksters, 3 fishermen, 1 steamboat pilot, and 1 banjo player. In 2020, the Madison on My Mind project from Metro Arts and Culture, funded by an NEA grant, reestablished our commitment to storytelling in this place called Madison. We have historic landmarks like the Maybell, the Rainbow Ranch, cornerstone homes like the one from Queen Kitty Wells and her beloved Johnny Wright, and over 35 documented Grand Ole Opry musicians who lived within walking distance of this area. The NEA showed a thriving, growing, creative class in Madison. The Madison Station Economic Development Plan that you have before you is inspired and led by that community. It's beautiful because it's for that community. I've personally been working on this vision for over 7 years. Anthony knows about 4 of them. And we're now on the cusp of it becoming a reality. Imagine 32 acres for 15 acres, 47% of the entire site is parks, open space, multimodal infrastructure, inspired by the new beautiful Madison Station Boulevard. Imagine 170 new multifamily units at 60 to 80% AMI, mixed throughout a walkable community of 1,694 new homes. Imagine 87,000 square feet of ground floor commercial activation. Imagine 236,000 square feet of modern office space. These are the things that Madison has been imagining for decades. Now is the time to make the Madison Renaissance a reality. Now is that time. An amazing team was assembled to bring this opportunity to us in a thoughtful, fiscally responsible way. We can't do it without your help. One thing that you will not find in this packet that happened in 2015 when I was first elected was my first action. It was to begin discussion about two things: the funding for what we now know as Madison Station Boulevard and the annexation of the area into the USD. Annexation is never easy, but after several meetings, that 60% of District 8 that was in the GSD at the time was moved into the USD. This was in anticipation of the renaissance of the Gallatin corridor. And commercial properties currently now pay the county tax rate of 3.254, the USD rate, not the 2.922 GSD rate. That extra 0.332 at the commercial rate is a significant part of our skin in the game. This has been talked about for 7 years. We've figured out how to make sure every single household is participating in this. My discussions with Mayor Cooper and his office have been positive and have offered supportive feedback. I know that Mayor Cooper's promise to see investment outside of the urban core and activate green space is served by this plan. I worked directly with Angie Hubbard, Director of Housing Division, on getting deep affordability as a benefit of this economic development plan and infrastructure deal. Metro Finance Director Flannery is working with Artesia and Jim Murphy on our team to ensure that the numbers are triple checked before your vote in November. A lot of work has been done. A lot of work that Madison Stratton could have never dreamed of in 1857. But we did it. We have. We can. We should. We will. We will see Madison Station come to life and become the catalyst for amazing things yet to happen. It's been my honor to serve this community. This is what they want. This is what they're willing to put their own skin in. This is a generational moment. This is why I moved into this area, was to see its potential. I am emotional about it because the whole city, the whole town of Madison, 40,000 people that live in Davidson County live in Madison. We are proud of it. We are willing to do everything we can to ensure its potential. We need your help to do that. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk to you about it and to tell you where I am with it. And I want to introduce you to the folks who have been able to pencil some of this together. I was able to attend the Harvard Kennedy School for State and Local Leadership this summer. It's one of the pleasures of my life. And one of the things that I learned there was whenever you're faced with change, there's basically two different ways that change happens: technical change and adaptive change. One of the ways I explained that is you got the color blue and you want to turn it green. Technical change is how much yellow do we need to add so that it works? Pencil it out. Make the numbers work. What do we need to do that? How much yellow is too much yellow? You guys on this board are helping us with that technical change. Adaptive change is telling the story of how important the color blue has been, how amazing the color green will be, and to getting the community to help us decide how much yellow needs to be added. I've spent a lot of time on the adaptive change. My colleagues have helped me with it. We have now found an opportunity to now make sure that the technical part is correct and we can move forward. So with that, Matt from Artesia, you want to say a few words? Matt Taylor.
If you will, just, everyone, just please make sure you introduce yourself first. We get your name
Yeah,
for the record too. Thank you.
Yeah, Matt Taylor, Artesia Real Estate, based out in Austin, Texas. And I'll give you a little background on us and our partner, the Cobble Group.
Is that one on up there by the screen? That one should be on. Yeah, thank you. You have to repeat, Councilmember Van Rees.
Yeah. No, well, thank you, Nancy. You've been doing an incredible job of stewarding us as we've tried to come up with what this project should be such that it fits the desires, the needs of the community, and I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to us today. My firm, Artesia, has been investing in commercial real estate since 2012, based in Austin, Texas. We've deployed about $190 million of equity into a diverse but focused portfolio of first apartments and a creative office, and now this land investment and master planning work. Our partners, Tyler Cobble, the Cobble Group, and the 40 other companies that he's built and based in East Nashville, has been extensively involved in leasing, selling, investing, creating in East Nashville, in the Madison area in particular. In the case of Madison Station, we do not get to claim any credit for foresight. We were fortunate to be preceded by Nancy and the community recognizing that this property represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a central public gathering place for Madison. Their efforts in 2018 to rezone the property created the largest single wholly owned, privately owned, developable parcel of MUG, mixed use general density or better, in the entirety of Nashville. We came into the project because we agree with them. And the way that we invest as a firm is what we call corridor oriented or corridor focused. Our goal is to identify streets in select markets that have untapped potential. Streets that are arterial to the urban core with excellent transit or the capacity to support excellent transit, wide right-of-ways, intentional zoning designations, and significant civic investment. Gallatin Pike has all of these in spades and is, in our opinion, the key to unlocking the potential for the Madisonian Renaissance. We first acquired Madison Square to be Madison Station. The name was pretty much handed to me.
Yeah.
It was kind of a, you have a choice to choose, but you don't.
Yeah.
By Option A, Madison Station. Option B, Madison Station.
Option C, option A or option B. So when we first acquired in March of 2021 and leaning into that corridor-oriented investing, we doubled down. We acquired Due West Plaza directly to the south, about 0.2 miles, bringing our total holdings in the area to 490,000, give or take, square feet of retail space and over 46 acres of entitled mixed-use developable land, giving us the opportunity to affect change with the leadership of the community and the people who actually are the ones driving the bus. So we're eager to play our role in bringing forth the Madisonian Renaissance. And we believe that our team, constructed of deeply rooted local Nashvillians, which helps me because I get to be the dumbest person in the room, as we're confident they've developed a plan that addresses the wants and needs of the community. So I'm gonna hand it to Hunter, the actual meat of that, where he'll go through what that project is, what it addresses, what was desired during the rezoning and the community outreach. Who will then hand it to Jim to discuss the TIF, and I look forward to any opportunity to answer your questions.
And I would say, before we hand it over to Jim, 'cause obviously we'll get into some more details, why don't you three stay up in case the board has some questions?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'll kind of move my way out of the way right here, and I'll stay right here.
Great, thanks, Matt. As Nancy
Okay.
mentioned, this.
Introduce,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I'm
Thank
Hunter
you.
G. I'm principal of Smith G Studio. We're architects, urban planners, interior designers. I'm an East Nashvilleian for 25 years now. Know Nancy since since the mid-90s as well. As Nancy mentioned, this process started a long time ago, actually long before we got involved. But along with Nancy, Kim Hawkins and her firm have been involved with this process since the beginning through previous owners. So it's been a pleasure working with this local team and with Matt and his team throughout the whole process, and along with the community. We recently had a community meeting in August, so you're actually seeing this exact same presentation that we showed the community back in August, where we really unveiled our reaction to what we've heard now for 6+ years from Madisonians and what they want to see in this really sort of historically important place in their community. The Madison Square Shopping Center, many of you probably know, really was at one time the heart of Madison. When it was built in the 50s, it was the newest thing. It was the brand new shopping center. And many Nashvilleians have these stories about going to the first Shoney's on this site and how important this site was. From an urban planner's perspective, this site is really interesting. I live really close to Gallatin Pike, and Gallatin Pike, especially closer to town, has not developed quite as quickly as some of the other corridors along the way. One of the main reasons that is the case is the size of the parcels and the depth of the parcels along Gallatin Pike. It's really limiting to make transformative change along these corridors. So this site, as Matt mentioned, is the largest MUG zoned property in the city along Gallatin Pike, and happens to sit right at the core of and the heart of Madison, right next to the library, next to Amqui Station, et cetera. So I'm going to try to be quick going through this presentation, but over the last several years, the conversations that have been had, and starting, this was actually a meeting back in 2018, January 2018, we started asking the community what they need, what are the challenges in the community in Madison. We had a lot of great input, a lot of great participation. Again, Nancy and Kim led this process. And one of the top thing we really heard that's missing in Madison, and I'll get to a little bit more details on this in a second, but is green space, is open space, is public space. We also heard that there's a need for small local businesses that support the local community, entertainment, retail, and residential. We also asked what challenges does Madison face and do people foresee with the Madison Square redevelopment. One of the things we keep hearing is we want to cater to the local community, to the Madisonians and our needs. At the public meeting in August, a woman told me, she said, please don't let the bachelorette parties come out here. Please don't let the pedal taverns.
Wait, can the party buses go down Gallatin Road? I haven't seen them yet, but are they?
They are.
They're spreading down. They're going out.
They are.
It's wide enough.
They're in 5 points.
I thought I saw some board members on one, but maybe not.
So, traffic and congestion is always a concern, of course, as Nashville continues to grow. And then, interestingly, 23% of the respondents said that the appearance of Madison Square, which now is 32 acres of buildings and asphalt, and a lot of empty asphalt. We also asked what people hoped for Madison Square, and you can see 38% said, a unique destination, much like what Madison Square was when it was originally built. And we've heard people say this in different ways, and what I think Madisonians are really looking for is kind of a heart of the community. And some of the investments that have been recently made were several and really important steps to get us there. This could be a huge step. So one of the things we do whenever we're looking at urban redevelopment is we zoom way, way out. And so what you're looking at here is this is Metro Parks plan to play, from their plan to play, which is their master plan document. And this shows the level of service of different types of parks within, all around Davidson County. And so you can see on our site that the level of service is relatively low for the different types of parks. So that, along with what we heard from the community, is sort of substantiated the real need for more public and open space and recreation in Madison. We also looked at the greenways plans. I'll zoom down a little bit closer and show how we can work in there, because there's some real opportunities in the Madison area to continue to expand our greenway system. So as we get a little closer, if you're not familiar with where Madison Square, the Madison Square site is, or now Madison Station site, it's just north of due west along Gallatin Pike. Gallatin Pike continues to have our highest ridership with WeGo of any of the routes in around town, including the station right here next to Madison Station and right in front of the Madison Library is the most active outside of the downtown main station. It is the most active stop. You can see how close we are to the river, and there are opportunities to take, and you'll see in the plans, our portion of the Greenway and connect it all the way out to 612 due west, which is the old Memorial Hospital, potentially connect to the river and along the river and connect up. This is the Madison Station Boulevard, which recently had its grand opening and parade. So building on the investments that have been made right next door, not only with the Madison Station Boulevard, but the new music venue, as well as Amqui Station, the library, etc. And interestingly, toward the west, this potential greenway connection, there are several properties that are publicly owned. So while some of these would require greenways through backyards and so on, but there's a real opportunity here to connect over to the new development at Old Memorial Hospital. Hopefully that's coming in. Okay. Okay, so I've reoriented slightly. North is no longer up, it's now to the right. Okay, so this is the 32-acre piece of property. The Madison Station Boulevard and the beautiful roundabout, 50 Ford, which is a really important senior community center there that has played an important role in the community and continues to. We hosted our community meeting there not long ago. The site of Timberhawk Hall, which is the new music venue that was built out there, and Amqui Station, and then Madison Library here. So you can see the concentration of community activity and amenities in the area, including what is hoped to be in the budget next year is the future Madison Station Park right behind the library. And Nancy, that's another project that Nancy's been working on. So as you can see from the aerial photograph, 32 acres of asphalt and buildings. There are some very viable tenants in there now with leases that Matt and his team are going to continue to honor and work with throughout. You'll see that in our phasing plan on how we can continue to maintain some of those important leases. Not only important because they need to honor those, but also there are some key tenants that the community has expressed interest in trying to keep there as long as we possibly can. Right.
I'm telling you, it's the axe throwing. It's the axe throwing.
Right, that's the most important.
Oh,
the hair store? All right. I don't know the terms on the lease there, Matt. So we'll show a little bit more detail in a few minutes with our phasing plans, but this is a general diagram of the layout of the site, which we were deliberate about essentially extending the same design of Madison Station Boulevard as a complete street with bike lanes and wide sidewalks and planting strips and trees, continue that character all the way through the site out to Emmett Avenue, which is one of our main gateways from Gallatin Pike. We then looked at potential uses on the site, and again, we heard from the community, we'd love to see retail, restaurants, residential, both high-end residential and affordable residential is what we've heard. As well as, and Nancy alluded to this earlier, and the mayor has been talking about this a lot, is finding opportunities outside of the core for jobs, outside of downtown Nashville. How can we continue to compete with Cool Springs and other places? So in addition to the restaurant, retail, and residential uses, there's a couple of 100,000 square feet of office space as well, right along Gallatin Pike land. We have also been working with WeGo on an enhanced station. Nothing is set in stone yet in terms of its location, so you'll see it in a couple of different places, but we've had several conversations with them about potentially providing an enhanced WeGo bus station, somewhat similar to what was recently built in Green Hills at Hillsborough High School.
Yeah, and Hunter, if you'll stop there, because for the board, I think that's an important point to speak on, because this board has approved some affordable housing developments along Dickerson Pike, right? And one of the advantages, right, is that people need affordable housing, but then they also need to be able to get to work, right? Because that's the way for everyone, because not everybody has a car, right? And without that, so if you can touch on that too, and this board also did passed a pilot for the WeGo facility in North Nashville as well. Yep. And we had a great discussion several months ago about that, because, it kind of falls in line with the whole economic development, and really, as Nashville has changed, we had the big companies come before us today, but is Nashville really helping everyone, right? And if folks don't have reliable transportation or access to get to where they need to go, then how can they have jobs? How can they continue to improve their economic situation? So
right, absolutely, that's a great point, Chairman. And when I sat on the Planning Commission, it was a big part of our conversation at that time was, where does the density need to be? We understood that we need to continue to grow, but we can't just be tearing down our neighborhoods, right? So where should that density be? And it always came back to along our pikes, where there's commercial land, where we have our main transit routes heading into downtown. And now, as Nigel mentioned, WeGo is starting to build neighborhood transit centers around the city. Again, the first being at Green Hills, the next one is going to North Nashville, along Clarksville Pike, which is envisioned as sort of a transit-oriented development around that. This is very similar, and let's take advantage of that infrastructure and that investment that the city has made, and continue to increase the ridership and provide opportunities to live close to transit so they don't have to get in their car.
If I can just jump in while we're talking about transit, because you might not be aware of the new WeGo 79, which is one of the very, unfortunately rare, but amazing east-west connections. And so both the 56 BRT Light, which is the workhorse of WeGo, is that Gallatin Pike corridor from the Walmart up past Rivergate all the way into downtown, right? But then the 79 actually is a loop that goes from the library site there all the way over to Skyline Hospital, and then back around again down to West Avenue. And so it's serving quite a few. So even if you live on Dickerson Pike, there's an east-west connection to this site without having to go downtown and back again. And WeGo is very committed to both the 56, obviously, but the 79 and the 76, which is the Neely's Bend line that goes all the way down the river and back again. So the transit skeleton is there to really serve an important spot at this location.
Thanks, Nancy. Let me walk you through this really quickly, and then we'll keep going and show the prettier pictures. As I mentioned, with the extension of Madison Station Boulevard around to Gallatin Pike, it creates the opportunity for a real gateway into the site, into the neighborhood. It also happens to be the low point on the site. There's a small creek that runs through here. So that is an opportunity to use our stormwater treatment tools in our toolbox to create an amenity. I'll show a rendering of that in just a second. And then the ability to connect to that greenway that I mentioned earlier along the creek and potentially across toward the old Memorial Hospital site. The yellow is residential. The blue is the office that I mentioned. So there's 3 potential office sites. And then the hatched areas is where the retail, restaurants, entertainment is. So that's all concentrated around an area we're calling the Crossroads. That's where we really see, kind of the heart of Madison, right? Where everyone gathers for different types of events, to shop, to eat, and again, I'll show another rendering of that soon. That has a nice greenway connection down the steep slopes here to the greenway and the creek in an area we're calling the Village Park. And then there's a fun little connection, again, trying to create as much connectivity for the community that's walkable and safe. This is what we call a living alley, so this will help service some of these blocks, but will also be a place that may be lit with festival lighting, or they could shut down for an event, and it becomes not only a service alley, but also a people place. So this is an aerial view. It's hard to see here, but from the same angle. We're capping the development at 7 stories in height. So it's moderate scale. We're not talking about downtown or even midtown here. We're talking about a moderate neighborhood scale as kind of maybe the downtown for Madison, right? I'm gonna keep going here. The gateways I mentioned, using our stormwater treatment and conveyance to actually create a potential amenity, ways of dealing with some of the slope on their site. If those of you who are familiar with it, there's quite a bit of slope, especially on the south end. These are just character images of other places. And then that's actually a view from Gallatin Pike at Emmett Drive with the water feature and the gateway leading into kind of the heart of the development. This is the view from the new roundabout, and so 50 Forward is over on your right, and Madison Station Boulevard is sort of behind you and to the left. So this is actually a view of what will be the first phase. So I'll walk you through the phases in just a second. But so again, building on those investments that have already been made and the infrastructure that's there currently today. This is the village images of what we envision for the Village Park leading down to the creek with accessibility, vegetation, public art, etc. And then this is what that might look like. Again, publicly accessible, connecting to the greenway, crossing the creek, and that open space that Madisonians said they wanted so desperately. A couple images here of the Crossroads, which I mentioned earlier, which is really that focus of restaurant, retail space, and activity, potential event lawn, event plazas, outdoor dining, maybe a splash pad. It's where you really want all of Madison to come and enjoy the site. So that's a view of what that might look like. Again, 5 to 7 stories generally. And this is what I referred to earlier as the living alley. So how do you take what has to be on the site to serve, the trash and your loading and all those kind of back of house areas, and celebrate it and make it a place where people will use and can use safely. So this diagram actually illustrates the public infrastructure. So it begins to get into more specifically the request here. And so you can see all of these are planned to be public streets, as well as all of the green is public open space. So you can see by this diagram that about a quarter of the site is in public infrastructure and open space. Additionally, there's another quarter of the site that is other open space, so it's on private property, but it may be an amenity. But about 50% of the site is either public infrastructure, public space, or other open space. So as dense as it may feel and look, still 50% of the site is not occupied by buildings. Similar diagram essentially showing the connection of the future Madison Station Park, the walkability, the bikeability, bike lanes, wide sidewalks, connecting to the potential WeGo Plaza, and the potential greenway, of course, beyond. So this begins to get into our phasing, and so as you start looking at the TIF package, you'll start to see how the request relates to this. But as I mentioned earlier, the very first phase is simply an extension of Madison Station Boulevard with a first phase of residential with buildings on both sides of the street to frame that. As I mentioned also earlier, this allows us to keep pretty much all the existing tenants in place. There's one building back here. Are there any tenants in that building now in the back? There are, okay. But the vast majority of the existing tenants would be able to remain for several years still. The next phases would extend and continue at Madison Station Boulevard all the way out to Gallatin Pike, including the water feature there at the gateway, and begin to get us into the area of activity, of mixed use, and of office development. So we're wrapping the backside with residential, which is up against the railroad tracks and the residential neighborhood to the west. And then finally, we anticipate coming back in, finishing out the public infrastructure with a couple more streets and furthering the development to finish out, fronting out to Gallatin Pike. And this gets into some specifics about the types of streets, street network, designing the streets to meet, again, as I mentioned earlier, to meet metro standards, but also to provide a very walkable, bikeable network throughout the neighborhood. And I think that's it.
So, before we get into more detail on TIF, so a couple items. So Councilmember Van Reese, this is obviously something you're very passionate about. We thank you for coming to speak to us. Can you talk to the time nature? Because obviously, in this situation, the developer already owns the property, so they're not under the gun because of due diligence or inspection period ending. Why is the timing? Why is it such a sense of urgency now? I know you've been working on it for a long time, but why is this? What makes now such a time critical item in your opinion? Thank you.
I think that the energy and the community feedback is really important, but then when you also look at the fact that the 23 elections are coming up, the redistricting of the areas, people, the council changes, things that are pending in that regard. I think every second term council member always gets that 7-year itch that Anthony can rely on. It's like, look, if I'm going to finish this, I really need to do my part to make sure it has every opportunity to be completed before all of a sudden it's budget season next year and the oxygen's out of the room, right? And so a lot of the reason that I'm wanting to kind of nudge this forward at a reasonable pace, not rush it, but just, not delay it either, are because the community's asked for that. Let's get on with it. We've been talking about this for so long. If you've been even in your own communities, Nashville loves to plan. How many presentations like this have you seen? How many documents have we looked at and said, this would be great? It's like, well, yeah. I think that there's some plan fatigue that's going on in the city, and action needs to happen. Somebody needs to see that this is actually happening, and it's actually happening in my neighborhood. So that's a lot of the reason for why I want to just kind of move it along at the appropriate pace.
And this might be a question for just two quick questions. I'll certainly turn it over to the board members, to my colleagues, but from a development standpoint, obviously lots of housing. For those people that haven't been there, I'm telling you, it's amazing to see that compared to that, to see that you can transform that. So obviously increasing density, maximizing the space going vertical. But obviously this board has also been, one of the items, again, I talked about it a little bit earlier, has been, really focused, and we had a meeting this summer devoted solely to affordable housing. Why was it so important to add affordable housing, you feel, in this development? And how did you get to that number? Some background on the quantity and then the AMI.
A lot of it has to do with the location and hearing from the community that green space was so very important, but they also have always been it's been more YIMBY than NIMBY in this area. We've been able to bring a lot of affordability throughout the area, and to balance that with market rate is extremely important. But jobs are very important, infrastructure improvements are very important, and having not just placemaking, but placekeeping take hold of this location was extremely important. And Artesia, Matt will remember when I said you can get it as affordable as you can, as much as you can, and tell me why you can't, if you can't. And we at first had wider affordability, and then I sat down with Angie Hubbard, and we talked with her, and absolutely agree that deeper was more important. So getting it down to 60%, having some units available at 60%, was the request from her that I in turn absolutely supported, which is to get deeper affordability as opposed to wider affordability. And knowing that there's quite a bit of other activities, there's affordability happening both at the development on Due West Avenue, both home ownership affordability as well as condo and different rental opportunities. There's of course, LDG developments at Nosy College of Art and two on Dickerson Pike and behind the Skyline Hospital. So there are several units of availability along this transit corridor, and so balancing that out with mixed income was what the community needed, and it absolutely seems appropriate.
Yep, thank you for that. And one of the items we heard in our meeting was we need more.
Yeah.
Right, we're already behind the 8 ball. So certainly if we can, if there can be 200-300 unit multifamily apartment complexes, that's great. We need those, but certainly for us to get to the number, right, these types of projects could be beneficial, not necessarily this one specifically, but just in putting in affordable housing units and not necessarily just solely multifamily residential complexes. So, all right.
You're gonna see me agree with you all the time on that for a number of different reasons. But I think that the importance to remember here is that it's zoned now for, you could do a Texas wrap and be done with it, but we have this opportunity to actually make a place and at the same time keep the place. And that's highly unusual in these circumstances. And so I'm confident that what the community has asked for is what you're seeing.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
To Nancy's point, Madison Square was developed in the 50s and 60s, and this is the first time we're getting another chance at this. And if we don't do it correctly, we may not get that chance for another 50 or 60 or 70 years. So that's the intentionality behind it.
So lastly, on this point, so more question for you as the developer and owner of the property. So obviously there's some talk about phasing. So two-part question. One, talk about phasing, kind of rough time limits on what it looks like. Obviously there's a lot that has to fall into place. Certainly step one would be this board would have to approve the economic plan. The council would then have to approve. So take that part out of the equation, but just assuming all that were to happen hypothetically, what does timing look like on phasing? And the second question, and again, I work commercial real estate, so it's challenging, but talk about displacements with tenants or the plan for that. I dealt with something very similar to this, and did for work, and unfortunately our project could not be developed in phases, and so we try to work with the tenants as much as possible, but some of the challenges you may run into, obviously, what's currently there now and what you're building, rents probably have to change quite a bit as well, and some, that might not work for some businesses. So talk about your plan, timing, phasing, and then the plan for displaced tenants as well.
Certainly, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to just go ahead and lean this out here to start being passed around. Just a brief one-pager on the project.
Sure.
Yeah, as it pertains to phasing, and obviously we stand here and it's the best laid plans of mice and men. So as it's anticipated today, a groundbreaking for phase one would be inside of 2023. Obviously a lot of these things do tend to be at the whim of capital markets, but generally I think if we have the ability to put the infrastructure in, we can help to affect that and create kind of this impetus. Effectively start inside of 2023 or early 2024 and anticipate, give or take, a 10-year development build out, where you can effectively stagger. What happens is that these phases have to stagger with how they would lease. So you would not develop a new apartment building until the first apartment building before it was leased. And we call that probably an 18 to 24 month stagger between those phases. And that's how we get out to, as you'll kind of see in the plans, how it kind of works out to about a 10-year development phasing. As it pertains to the tenancy and the displacement of tenancy, certainly something that we can appreciate and be sensitive to. That's part of why we've developed in the direction we have, so that it can honor out, as Hunter mentioned, all the lease contracts that are inside of it. And then it gives us time to work with those tenants to come up with, we're fortunate, we have a very deeply rooted local group that's got the leasing capacity to help find new locations, and try to help work with those businesses. Another part of that too is I think there's a natural sensitivity that has to be, if let's say a lease is up, you still have to give time. You can't sit there and hold the feet to the fire on rent and other expenses. I think you've got to be sensitive to that. There's cost to move. You have to be willing to be participatory in that. I wouldn't say that there's some formal one size fits all. I think that's tenant by tenant based on how they need to operate. But in that same sense, we also have to be sensitive that we're not, unfairly treating one over another. So there's no specific, we'll give each person this. But I think that's just a sensitivity we've learned with these projects that we have to handle directly.
Absolutely, and
I can,
go ahead.
I just
Councilman Brown, I just want
want
to
to
get
speak
your
to
thoughts on that.
the character. And people say stuff, but what do they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to speak to the character of the company, both Artesia and the Cobble Group, on the way that they've helped the current tenants during COVID. They've been able to really make sure that they've stayed around and had the opportunity to succeed. And so I've seen the appropriate compassion and expect that to continue.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And like I said, it's something I went through this and it's challenging, but I'm glad to hear that there's some conversations and planning. And, as communities change and redevelop, that's, it changes, right? But certainly working with people and giving them as much notice. And I'm glad to hear too, working with them, with the tenants, if they want to move to another location is huge as well. And obviously in this market, not easy to do. Right, especially for folks that don't do commercial real estate. So I think that part is great. Before, and I know we're over, we're it's after 12 here, board. So before we talk, just not in great detail, but overview kind of on the process, a little bit on tips. Before we get into that for a couple of moments, are there any questions? I'll start here on my left. Any questions for the architect, developer, Councilmember Van Rees? Comments on your end? All right, let me go here to my right, board member. See, now it's in my head. Board member Davis.
Yes, and I may have to sneak out. Just because I may have to go here in a second, are we going to talk more about TIF next month as well? I mean, it's coming before us officially, so you'll be back next month?
Potentially.
Okay, all right.
So let me clarify. So there's still a few items that have to be done. For example, Metro Finance has to review this, our legal team. But assuming, right, that those things are in place, then yes, we would talk more in detail about that.
Okay,
at
great.
the meeting.
That's perfect. And then just about the project in general, thank you so much for the presentation. That was really neat. I get the sense it's a very rare opportunity. Definitely was feeling that, from you guys. I will say you've got like the Nashville dream team of, folks here, from lobbyists to architects and everybody. So, kudos, since you're not from here, right? You've got the dream team of locals here, so.
I asked Nancy who to hire.
Okay, gotcha.
And she gave
that
me a
makes
very
sense.
short list.
Get what you
Yeah.
pay for sometimes.
Awesome. And people that, we've worked with for many years on many of these projects, and you're in good hands there. Other than that, it's really cool. I mean, I like I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I've talked to Nancy about this so much over the years, but sort of describing it as like a downtown Madison really made sense. And you think about when you go to Atlanta or Austin and these kind of exurbs or almost suburbs, whatever you call them, kind of have that sort of thing. And we don't really have that a lot in Nashville. And it's an interesting, it's something we need. And I think, having we've talked about this for years in East Nashville, having offices and jobs where people will stay. It helps us small businesses too, like when people kind of can work in these little areas and corridors.
Go to lunch.
Yeah, go to lunch, go to happy hour, all those things. It just support the retail, everything else. And I think you guys are doing great on the affordability, and I agree with that. Getting a little more 60 was the right idea. And I know we'll talk more about that and the TIF next week. But before I was sneaking out, I wanted to make sure I put my 2 cents in it. It just seems really great, and I'm proud of all the work you've done thus far. And next month we can dig into the TIF part, but it's nice to hear about the project and learn more. So thank you.
Questions or comments, Board Member Johnson? All right, Vice Chair Siegel, questions or comments?
I just have one question. So there's a lot of road. Will it stay managed by a development agency, or will any of this ultimately be dedicated?
Sure, so the anticipation, this road here, which there's probably that last slide has that kind of differentiations.
Yeah.
This is a 76-foot right-of-way that clues into the Madison Station Boulevard. It would be anticipated that would be a public road. Some of these smaller, like the living alleys, the 68-foot right-of-ways may retain, they would always be publicly accessible, but may retain private ownership so that they could be used for events and programming. Obviously, we can't just go in and say the entire community wants to hold a parade. Let's shut down a public road. So
you can. It's a $50 permit.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Actually, welcome to Nashville.
So that's the current anticipation. We're certainly open to kind of the conversations around that, but we felt like it made sense.
I was just curious.
Hearing the TSU marching band through this corridor would be fantastic. I have no problem with that.
I'd pull that permit.
Okay, yeah.
That was actually my one question about the development itself. It is clear you have poured your heart and soul into this, and y'all have listened to the neighborhood for years, and it's evident that is being brought to light. So thank you.
I have a quick question. How did you know, do you see more people coming into Madison, moving into Madison, or why was it now? I mean, I know you've been working on it. What did you see? What are the economic elements that made you want to invest in this?
Well,
You tell me.
Yeah, so a lot of the times what we try to do, this is the kind of best time to plant a tree metaphor. So this is perhaps somewhat more of an urban planning principle, coined many decades ago, but streets being the lifebloods of cities. If you close your eyes and you envision yourself visiting a place, you remember the streets and walking down the streets, ironically more than just a skyline. It's that feeling of safety and engagement that you feel walking around. So when we, yeah.
There's an economic value.
So when we first look at those streets for what effectively has the developable traits, a lot of times we'll look at the interior of these corridors, which is where here it's Main Street to Gallatin, and the explosion that's happened there. Let alone the explosion that's coming with, obviously Oracle and a million other developments. But what we saw is already kind of the fire starter. And we wanted to get ahead of that by being down the road where it will inevitably push.
So, you don't need to answer this
Sure.
in detail, but are you a piece of the puzzle because Oracle's coming here that you knew that?
We were here before that.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand.
It was a wonderful surprise.
I mean, because you're right, all that's pulling in, Austin has that same layout. So
Their building here
Okay.
looks a lot like Austin's, yeah. We were actually fortunate and completely unaware that it was happening in Austin.
I just thought I'd
but,
ask, thank you.
Yeah,
The opportunities for Madison have always been there, just the political will hasn't been. It took 3 mayors to build Madison Station Boulevard, right? People are really excited about it. The Timberhawk Music Hall is nearing a $20 million investment. It's gonna be the next Ryman, right? People are coming to Dee's Country Cocktail Lounge is on, to hear music. The East Side Bowl, and the work that's happening, there, getting, on the map more for the National Cemetery. I mean, it's the National Cemetery. We don't talk about it, right? People, the visitors in town should be coming up the corridor, right? You're a bus road away from Opryland. It's at that perfect place. But having lived in Madison since 1990, I'm tired of going to East Nashville to eat, and I'm tired of going to Hendersonville for a movie, right? It's like we are shopping, we are working, we are doing the things, but we're going elsewhere to doing it. And we want to be able to kind of have a place that's our own, that was built by our own influence, and can represent that. So there's going to be a lot of change. Change comes, right?
Good.
And the people are not afraid of change, they're afraid of loss. And the problem has been is in Madison, there's been this loss. And so we want change to actually work for us this time.
Thank you.
And the only thing I would just add, just because I live in East Nashville too, is, and growing up in Nashville, you know, one thing I've seen, and I've had people talk to me about it, you know, East Nashville has obviously grown, changed. I live there, so I'm partial to it. It's a great neighborhood. But when you talk about East Side Bowl, it's just on the other side of Brawley Parkway. And so, you know, I would think too, just from the people I talk to, you know, Madison is growing, just like our city is growing. And obviously with you as developer, commercial real estate, you're going to where the people are. And you're looking at demographics. And so that speaks to the growth of Madison. And if you live in Madison, what's really great, we have some friends that live in Madison. You know, they bought a house a few years ago on an acre lot. And it was where I live in East Nashville, at least in my neighborhood, there's no acre lots anywhere. But I would say it's probably a bit more affordable than some parts of East Nashville, but it's a great area and it's growing. And what's really neat about it is you're on Gallatin, you're close to Gallatin Road and you're close to Brawley Parkway. And Brawley Parkway gets you anywhere you need to go. So I think it just all of that has converged, and you see kind of you talked about D's. I had some people talk about that too, so.
when we had a preliminary traffic analysis completed, it spoke to the capacity to support what was already here. What we're planning, the capacity that's already baked into the area. So if you've got the ability, the infrastructure in terms of just the street networks, I think that speaks to how underserved it's been in development, right? Because you have that immediate transit accessibility.
This is in Tier 1 area for Nashville Next, and was instrumental in the original transit plan, was to build this corridor out for transit. There's no question that Gallatin Pike has its problems, and whether it's stormwater or density, and being able to actually have an opportunity to create an extended period of infrastructure improvements is really going to help the entire corridor.
Yeah, well, thank you. So very quick, just a couple minutes on TIF. We'll get more into this here at a later meeting. So we'll do very high level here. So board's being asked potentially at a future meeting, approve an economic plan. As part of that, Jim, correct, that would involve some tax increment financing down the line. I looked it up. I think this property's doing about $235,000 in property tax revenue, at least for 2021. So the increment, obviously, this fancy new multifamily project would generate more in property tax revenue. And theoretically for the board, this board would be pledging that increment to go towards the loan that the developer would take out to cover some infrastructure costs, et cetera. But there would be no recourse to the board. Our requirement is to pledge that increment percentage to the loan. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I,
Oh, you've taken all the words that I was gonna say, so I don't need to really, yeah, I mean, this project is, as Nancy and Hunter and Matt have described, has a lot of infrastructure components that need to be provided to make the project work. And in addition to that, we've got an old mall that needs to come down in order for the project to go forward. And so what we're proposing is using some of the incremental tax revenue that's generated from the new development to fund the construction of the public infrastructure, the removal of the old buildings, and the preparation of the site for the vertical development. It's not going to be used for the vertical development of the multifamily office or retail components, but it will be preparing the site for those. And the reason for that, obviously, is without that gap funding, it makes it really hard for this project to do the things that it wanted to do, such as all the infrastructure that the community wanted, the parks and the wide boulevards, but it also helps in making the affordable project possible, because without that additional funding, the developer would have a hard time financially providing the affordable piece. So even though it's not being used to construct the affordable piece, it's being used to help make the project, the total project work, so that the affordable piece can be built by the developers as they go forward. Now, just briefly, under the state law that sets up how you do a TIF from the Industrial Development Board, this board has to adopt the economic impact plan. That's the document that basically describes the project and what the TIF, how much of the increment will be used and what the increment will be used for. In order to do that, this board has to conduct a public hearing. And so at the meeting where we appear next time with the economic impact plan to discuss it in detail, we will have to conduct a public hearing and let anybody from the public who wants to speak. Then after it's approved by this board, it has to go to the council to be approved by a resolution. So that's kind of the process that we will go through in the next, as we get through this process of reviewing, having the finance department, Metro Legal, and everyone review the economic impact plan, the underlying financial assumptions that are proposing the generation of the TIF. And then the way we're proposing to do the TIF loans is a little bit different. In the Bellevue deal, I think they did all their TIF loan up front. They got a loan up front and used that to help pay for the development. In the Oracle deal, Oracle had enough funds to basically say, we'll pay for everything and just get reimbursed. But this is kind of a combination of the two. Matt's going to pay for the front end cost of building each phase, and then come in and ask for a loan to be basically pay them back after the phase had been completed. So you will know
that it got done.
That it's done. Yeah. Okay. So that's one of the issues with these deals is the project going to be done? Or are we going to give you money and then you're not going to do the project? Well, we're not going to have that problem here, because you're going to be reimbursing them for things that they've already paid for. So we'll be coming back to you periodically as the project is developed to actually do the TIF loans.
And just due to time, just conceptually, the TIF serves as a collateral. The future tax incremental dollars basically serves as collateral to allow the developer to get the loan, correct?
Right. It lets him be able to go ahead and do the front end financing that they're going to need to do, with the understanding of how that is going to get paid back with the increment. And critically, and you've already mentioned this, Nigel, but every time I do one of these, I make sure I say it multiple times. Those loans are totally non-recourse to the board. The only money that's pledged to pay off the loan is the increment. If the increment isn't large enough to pay off the loan, that's not the board's problem, that's Matt's problem. And so you don't have any exposure other than just paying the increment that comes to you. And under the council's it was not recent anymore, it's been, 3 years, 4 years, policy on TIFs, only 75% of the increment can be used for this project. 25% of the increment goes to Metro. So Metro gets new money from this project. Also, Metro gets the base tax amount, which is the amount that they're currently collecting minus the debt service component, and they also get the debt service component. So they get the amount of the tax rate that's dedicated to debt service goes to Metro on the front end. The base tax goes to Metro on the front end. 25% of the increment goes to Metro. So this does generate new money to Metro from the very beginning. It's not one of those where Metro doesn't see any new money for umpteen years. They get money from the beginning due to the council's policy. So we think this is a good approach to provide a mechanism to make this project possible, and we look forward to spending more time talking with you about the details of the economic impact plan when we see you next.
Yep, and we'll, go ahead.
Can I just ask a quick question about that TIF hearing? I know that one of the things that was so nice about Oracle, I mean, it was a very long hearing, but because of the pandemic, we were able to do it
virtually,
and we had just a huge response, and because of our meeting time, it's very difficult for people to get here. And I think there are probably people in the community who want to speak to how they feel about this. And my question would be, is there any legal way to create a dial-in portion for that public hearing so that we can make sure that people who can't come in person to 10 o'clock downtown can share
So
their
when we
feedback?
did the public hearing for Oracle, Metro provided us with a link to provide for people
Right.
who wanted to participate. I assume that technology still is around. It didn't go away when the pandemic.
Yeah, I guess you're asking
We
legally,
allow
can we do
Right.
it?
To do it because we're not under the emergency.
Yeah, I don't
Right,
think the
but
state.
again, I think, again, we can let people either participate or participate in person or virtually. I would definitely recommend you have both.
Yeah, Chair, I would.
Let's look
like
into that
to
legally,
see if we
understand,
can Figure
yeah,
out if that can happen.
absolutely, we'll look into that.
If I can just, I'm going to, at the next scheduled meeting on November the 16th, I'm going to be in Kansas City at the League of Cities, so me not being here doesn't mean anything. You know, obviously, you know how I feel about it.
That's one of the reasons we wanted to meet today.
Yeah.
So that you
So
could
you
hear
could
this
hear what
part.
was going on. The Madison Rivergate Area Chamber of Commerce's president is on maternity leave. There's just a whole lot. So I'm actually not anticipating a lot of people. We've already talked about this 100 times. When last conversations I've had, they think it's already been done. So, we need to have it and it'll be notified, but, if you don't get anybody talking on it, it just means that they feel like they've already talked out, so.
Thank you. So thank you, Vice Chair Siegel. We'll look into that. And again, obviously, we're able to do that because the virtual deal. So I'll say to this board, there'll be more information to come. We'll get this presentation out to you. We'll get FAQs out to you. We'll get a summary out to you. And again, there's still several items that need to happen for this to go on the November agenda. So if all those things are in order, including Metro Finance reviewing, then we'll put this on. But we'll get some more documents out to everyone and kind of go into greater detail on this. So any other questions or comments? No, we've had a very robust meeting today. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, well, thank you to our guests for coming. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you again, Councilmember Van Rees. All right.
Thank you.
All right, very quickly, I'm going to keep the chairman's report very brief for today. One, just FYI, WeGo, there's anticipated WeGo opening, groundbreaking for the new transit center in North Nashville coming up here, potentially over the next month. I will make sure to let the board know about that date as soon as it becomes available. Two, I was going to present this, but due to time will not. I will ask Latanya to send this out. The Dominium project, the second affordable housing project we did on Dickerson Pike, south of Dickerson, is moving along. I passed it yesterday. It's looking amazing. Got some great pictures. I'll have the team send that out just due to time, just so you can take a look at that. And then lastly, very briefly, I want to introduce Latanya. So excited. Less than 2 weeks and she's just thrown in, but obviously Latanya, I've asked Latanya at a future meeting once she's got some time here to present a plan and how she sees economic development and small business. So if you can just very briefly give us, your role, different title too, it's a little different than before, and kind of just quickly your background, and really appreciate, glad to have you on board.
Sure, thank you, Nigel. So I'm Latanya Channel. I'm in the Mayor's Office of Economic and Community Development. My title has changed. As Director of Economic Growth and Small Business Development, with a special emphasis, of course, on small business development. I most recently was the State Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration for the state of Tennessee, and was with SBA for 20 years, 8 years here in Davidson County, proud resident of Davidson County. And looking forward to being with you guys at least monthly.
Sometimes we meet twice a month if we
Okay, no
need
problem.
to. It's been a lot going on this year, which is good. So, all right, thank you, Rhonda. Moving on to item number 8, approval of financial matters. Rhonda, any financial matters that we need to approve of today? All right, thank you. All right, with that, it is now 12:41. Unless there be any other further business, I want to thank our team from Metro, thank the National Museum of African American Music, thank you to Metro ITS, thank you to all of our guests, and most importantly, thank you to the board. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.